is James Frankel, and I'm a professor of cultural and religious studies at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. And I have the pleasure of working with the Anatolian Cultural and Dialogue Center, and also of introducing tonight's distinguished speaker. I want to make sure that I read your introduction correctly. So, excuse me. So tonight, of course, we are going to, the topic of tonight is religion and politics in contemporary Turkey. And it is my honor to be able to introduce you to Fauzi Bilgin, who is the founding president of the Rethink Institute in the United States. It's a Washington, D.C. based organization. And his areas of expertise are constitutional politics, Islam and politics, and Turkish politics. So he is a political scientist. His education, he received his bachelor's degree at Ankara University and his doctoral degree, his PhD, at the University of Pittsburgh in the United States. And he has been a professor of political science both in the United States and in Turkey. And we're very lucky tonight that he is going to introduce us to some interesting aspects of Turkish politics. He's also the author of Understanding Turkey's Kurdish Question and Political Liberalism in Muslim Societies. So I won't delay. He's going to speak for a short time, but really we want to open up the discussion to all of us. So please be comfortable. We're going to have this as an informal discussion, and your feedback and your questions will be welcome after the initial presentation. So thank you very much, Fauzi. Please make yourself comfortable.
Well, good evening, everyone. I might stumble a little bit. I am still under the weather and the travel is very exhaustion and so on, so I can stumble a little bit, all right? But I'll do my best. This is a topic that I like. It's not my day job to talk about religion and politics. We write policy papers mostly on the U.S.-Turkey relations and sometimes dealing with, military issues, strategic relations, and how to fight against ISIS, but in terms of like military details and so on. But I have done my PhD on the prospect of political liberalism in Muslim societies, and my model country was, or I was hoping at the time, was Turkey. And I finished my dissertation in 2003. At the time, AKP just came to power, and they were still very new, and they were not as Islamist as today. They were calling themselves Muslim Democrat, and but the secular elite was still wary of them, and there was some sort of like a balance of power between the two. And I suggested in my dissertation, based on the model in India, Israel, and so on, that usually religion gets politicized when it is suppressed. Right? So if we don't suppress religion, and then but find some sort of like a common ground that's based on the philosopher John Rawls and so on, I'm not going to go into detail, then we'll have a working democracy in a Muslim society like Turkey without, resorting into like frequent military interventions and also disadvantaging, majority of the people that are religious. And my dream actually came true in a few years, not because of AKP, but the developments led into some progress in the area of democracy in Turkey. European Union offered candidacy to Turkey. That meant that Turkey needed to implement some political reforms, which were good for democracy. Because of that, military retreated from politics, and that was good for democracy. And there were constitutional amendments that expanded rights and liberties of the people, and these were all great stuff. And about the year like 2008, 2009, 2010, around that time, it was almost like a perfect situation in Turkey, where you don't have this assertive kind of hardcore secularism anymore, which is usually identified with the idea of Kemalism coming from Kemal Atatürk. And then you also didn't have like a political Islam or something that threatens the lives of seculars or the regime itself. And the good thing is that this situation was basically pretty much, governed by people who call themselves Muslim Democrats, and that could have been emulated by other Muslim countries in the world. Turkey was anyway at the forefront of democratic progress in the Muslim world. It is the oldest democracy in the Muslim world, with the most experience. So I was very happy to see that my, the theoretical undertaking that I took in my dissertation was realized somehow in the country. But then things took a different turn. Because, there was a void of power, and there were personal aspirations of Erdogan as the leader, and the political discourse shifted after the Arab Spring. It was more towards political Islam, more towards catering, the Islamist kind of aspirations and demands in some segments of the society. And it was more kind of drifting into authoritarian language and practice. So in that respect now, people are saying that Islamism or political Islam collapsed in Turkey, failed, because it ended up in authoritarianism. People are saying that all Islamism basically ends in, culminates in authoritarianism. So there's nothing really desirable about that. But I would argue against this, because I don't think what's happening in Turkey is a failure of political Islam. It's more of a yes, it's a drifting towards authoritarianism, but more of it's a personal, because of void of power, because of personal aspirations, because of over-consolidation of power under one man. Not that I sympathize with political Islam or something, but we have to identify what's happening there, because political Islam was never a viable alternative in Turkey anyway. So this is pretty much the current situation, and I will come back to that. If we go back a little bit, just to give a historical perspective, Turkey was heir to Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire was a multi-faith, multi-ethnic society. The leadership was the core leadership was Muslim. It was not an Islamic state, and all faith have their own a legal house, so to speak. Muslims had a Muslim leader, and Christians had a Christian leader, variety of Christians. Jews had their own, like a chief rabbi, and so their religious affairs were run by these people, and the political leadership was basically providing space for all these people. Initially, there were a hierarchy between the faiths and I mean, the faiths, Islam was prioritized over others. But after the reforms in 19th century, they were all equalized. So majority Muslim population was not happy with that because of the pressure from West and so on. The empire reformed itself towards that. So, you know, coming to First World War, which ended Ottoman Empire, you're talking about a very diverse, multi-ethnic, multi-religious society in the area of Anatolia, Middle East, Balkans, and so on. Ottoman Empire collapsed after the First World War, and Turkey emerged as a nation state under the leadership of Kemal Atatürk. But he did something. First, he nationalized the country. Basically, wanted to build a nation of Turks, which did not exist before, and that was a constitutional identity that was superimposed over all other identities. And second thing, he wanted this identity, this model citizen, to be a secular citizen, meaning that, you know, you have some faith, but you don't manifest this. You don't. You keep it to yourself. There were, at some point of time, there were hostilities even against, like, you know, to mosques or azan recitation, things like that. There were a lot of banning of religious rituals and material. Those things change after that, but you know, the secular ideology and culture of the state sustained over decades. In the meantime, the conservative religious segment of society, which kind of constitute more than half of Turkey, or even more, maybe 2/3 of Turkish society, they felt disadvantaged, and they thought that this is an injustice to them because their faith, their values are not represented in the state level, the political level, and they started to basically struggle against that. So there were different tracks of Islamism or Islamic movement in Turkey, starting from 50s and 60s. There was a political movement, first emerged as a political party that was shaped by, like, some Islamic values and discourses, and also influenced from other Muslim movements in the world, like Muslim Brothers at the time. There were also, like, civil initiatives like Hizmet and so on that also originated around the same time, which refused to go under political parties. And when we come to 80s or even 90s, thanks to some liberalization efforts of the political leadership, all these Islamic movements basically began to be very manifest and also very dominant in culture. And 90s was a tumultuous time in Turkey. And at the end of 90s, in the beginning of 2000, the secular leadership basically bankrupted the country, collapsed the political system. The country went from one financial crisis to another financial crisis. And at that point of time, a coalition of former Islamists, liberals, and other Democrats, which was called AKP, emerged. And all the Islamist leadership, such as Erdogan, Abdullah Gül, Bülent Arınç, and so on, call themselves now Muslim Democrats. They say that now we are Muslim Democrats. We're not Islamists anymore. We're not seeking an Islamist state. We're not using the discourse that are generally used by other political Islamists in the world. And so they came to power. They won because people sympathized with them, and they kept winning the elections. and they are still in power. But then the AKP that we have in early 2000s and now is not the same animal. It's a different thing that transformed over time, and it sounds more Islamist, although it's not Islamist, as I mentioned. It sounds more Ottoman, neo-Ottoman, you know, there's some like nostalgia. It sounds more sultanistic, all right? So there are all these popular elements now infused into the political discourse and the structure of the party. And there are symbolism with like palace, you know, other, some like religious, manifesto of religious nationalism, which I can go to detail if there are questions. These sort of elements were not present in the early years of 2000, where AKP was a progressive party, a progressive government run by pious religious people, apparently going to prayers, their wives had headscarves and so on. So in that respect, that gave a lot of hope to not only to other Muslim countries, but also generally the Western countries and Western elites that, well, probably there is a possibility of a Muslim democracy in the world under the model and leadership of Turkey. And there were other potential candidates, like Malaysia was looking good at the time, Indonesia was looking good at the time, and there were like Senegal was looking good at the time, and who knows, others would appear by emulating this model of democratic system, somewhat secular, soft secular system, market capitalism. All right, this was good for, especially from Western perspective, and kind of diversity and some commitment to these like universal values. So that was the model, and that was a great model that worked for Turkey, for the world, and so on. But then what we have now is a different model, and this model it cannot be emulated. It's a Turkey-specific model. Because it's very personalistic. It is personified in the person of Erdogan. It's more like an Erdoganism, and it's pretty much a structure of some sort of like a political, let's say, a team of people that have been working through these phases of political development, but they ended up creating their own native system that is embedded with religion, with Ottomanism, with pragmatism, with populism, a little bit of capitalism, and also a lot of clientelism. And I've been talking with James earlier today, saying that this model fits right into the general character of Turkish society. It is, Turkey was never a perfect democracy. It was an electoral democracy at best, with a lot of interventions from the military, and people basically like elections, and elections are usually fair elections, and they think they are important. But beyond that, we're not talking about some people infused with liberal values and individualism or so. So that never happened in Turkey. So now they have some sort of a regime with a leader, with a charismatic leader, and with symbolism of palace and other things that are catering to their general values of a populist religion, some version of clientelism, but not too religious, not too kind of imposing. Absolutely not a reference to Sharia or something. Not too, let's say, too demeaning for the other parts of the society. But is a very attractive, very appealing ideology. As long as it's coupled with economic progress and stability, it will always win any election in Turkey. So that's, I think, like as much as I can summarize the religion and politics in Turkey, and I'm open to your questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much.